Imagine standing at the altar on your wedding day.
Okay.
You're looking your partner right in the eye. The music is playing softly. All your closest friends and family are watching.
Yeah.
And you say, with complete sincerity, I promise to be entirely faithful to you, but I'm also going to keep my online dating profiles active. Just in case.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that completely shatters the fundamental premise of the commitment. I mean, a vow with a built-in escape hatch isn't actually a vow at all.
Exactly. It sounds totally ridiculous when you frame it like that. But, that exact dynamic, that deeply ingrained psychological hesitation to just close out our options and full commit, that is the landscape we're exploring in today's deep dive.
Right, something everyone struggles with.
For sure. We're looking into the profound psychology of absolute commitment, the true cost of decision-making, and why human beings are so utterly terrified to just burn their ships. And to do this, we're looking at a fascinating stack of ancient source material for you today.
We really do have a very rich set of texts today. We are pulling from the book of Joshua, specifically looking at variations from the King James, the New International, and the Amplified translations.
Yeah, and we're bringing in the Dake Annotated Reference Bible too, right?
Exactly, which gives us some incredible historical context. Plus, we're bringing in Charles Spurgeon's classic commentary, The Treasury of David, and even contrasting some of these ancient ideas with New Testament passages from the Gospel of Matthew.
Right. And just to be super clear up front, our mission for you as a listener today is not to preach, at all.
No, not at all.
We are looking at these ancient religious texts and theological commentaries totally objectively. We aren't endorsing them as literal truth or, pushing any sort of religious agenda. Rather, we are analyzing them to extract these incredibly sharp psychological insights they offer about human nature, trauma, and really just how we make choices.
Yeah, the psychology here is just brilliant. And the focus of our analysis centers on a very specific climactic moment in ancient history. It's Joshua chapter 24, verses 14 through 24. So the Israelites are all gathered at Shechem, and they're preparing to renew their national commitment to their God.
Which, normally, this is the part of the movie where the leader gives this rousing motivational speech, right? They survived the wilderness, they crossed the river, they are finally in a new land. You would totally expect a victory lap.
Right. Some big triumphant moment.
Yeah. But Joshua does the exact opposite. He delivers this super jarring reality check. And to really grasp why he does this, we have to look at the specific baggage he demands they leave behind. I mean, he doesn't just give them a generic command to be better people.
No, he gets very specific.
Right. He categorizes their historical baggage by linking it to 3 distinct bodies of water, which is just such a cool way to frame it.
It really is. Geography is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this text. Joshua basically commands the people to throw away the foreign gods from 3 very different eras of their history. So the first category he targets are the gods from, quote, beyond the Euphrates River.
Okay, the Euphrates.
Yeah. And Joshua explicitly names Terah, who was the father of Abraham, pointing out that long before this new nation even existed, their ancestors worshipped other gods in Mesopotamia.
Wait, hold on. So Terah is Abraham's dad.
Correct.
Why does Joshua bring up someone from centuries ago when he's talking to the current generation? That seems, that's ancient history with a capital A for them.
Because he is forcing them to confront their generational baggage. The gods beyond the Euphrates represent these deep-seated ancestral ways of viewing the world. Joshua is pointing out that their default setting, culturally speaking, is rooted in systems of belief that completely predate their current identity.
Oh, wow.
Right. These are the ancient traditions that just get passed down silently from parent to child, long after people forget why they even started doing them in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that translates so perfectly to the modern listener. If we look at this psychologically, your Euphrates gods are those generational habits.
Exactly.
They are the toxic family dynamics, the inherited prejudices, or the unexamined anxieties that you cling to simply because, well, that is how my family has always operated. It is the baggage you were born into, long before you ever had a choice in the matter.
Spot on. And that generational baggage is just the first layer. The second category Joshua names are the gods of Egypt, which are directly associated with the Red Sea.
Okay, so moving closer in time.
Right. These are the gods of their captivity. And this is where Charles Spurgeon's commentary on Psalm 106 provides some really brilliant insight. He notes how frequently and how easily the Israelites slipped back into Egyptian idolatry. The most famous example, of course, being the creation of the golden calf at Mount Horeb.
See, I have always found that story so baffling.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because think about it. They were enslaved in Egypt. They suffered terribly. Why on earth would they go out into the wilderness and just immediately build a monument to the symbols of their enslavers?
It's crazy on the surface, but it's all about the psychology of trauma and survival. Spurgeon points out that the Israelites had spent generations watching the Egyptians worship Apis, the sacred bull. In that culture, the bull represented agricultural strength, stability, fertility.
Okay.
So when the Israelites are suddenly out in this chaotic, terrifying wilderness and they feel totally abandoned, what happens? Their higher reasoning shuts down and their survival instincts just kick in.
Oh, man.
Yeah. They revert to the symbols of stability they knew in Egypt, even though those symbols were tied to their slavery, because familiarity often feels safer than freedom.
Wow, that is incredibly dark, but it makes complete sense. So if you are listening to this right now, your Egypt gods are the coping mechanisms, the survival instincts you developed during past seasons of trauma or hardship. When you're under stress, you revert to the things that kept you safe when you were in a bad place, even if those habits are actively destroying your life now. You might have left the toxic environment, but the minute you feel threatened, you go right back to the golden calf of your own captivity, just because it's what you know.
It's a really powerful analogy. Which brings us to the third and final body of water Joshua mentions, the Jordan River and the gods of the Amorites.
The Amorites.
Yeah, this represents the local culture they are currently occupying. So if the Euphrates is the distant past and Egypt is the recent trauma, the Amorite gods represent the present moment. It is the overwhelming pressure to assimilate into the surrounding culture.
Basically, the pressure to be successful by the world's current metrics. And the source material actually gives us a very specific case study of this trap, right? With the story of a man named Achan in Joshua chapter 7. Can you explain what happens there?
Oh, Achan is the ultimate example of falling for the Amorite gods. So the Israelites are commanded to completely destroy the city of Jericho, dedicating everything in it to their god as what the text calls devoted things. They aren't supposed to take any plunder for themselves.
Zero plunder.
Right. But Achan covets the wealth he sees. He secretly takes this beautiful Babylonian garment, 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold, and he just hides them in his tent.
Okay, but playing devil's advocate here for a second. They just fought a battle. Isn't he just taking the spoils of war? Like, what makes taking a robe and some silver such a massive violation?
Because in the context of an ancient covenant, taking those items wasn't just petty theft, it was a fundamental breach of allegiance. The Babylonian garment and the gold were ultimate status symbols of the surrounding culture. Achan is essentially attempting to blend the victory of his god with the wealth and status metrics of the Amorites.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, he wants the protection of his covenant, but he also wants to look wealthy and successful to all the people around him. And according to the text, this hidden compromise brings total disaster on the community, leading to Achan's destruction in the Valley of Achor, which literally translates to the Valley of Trouble.
So for you, your Amorite gods are the modern cultural pressures you face every single day. It's careerism, it's the obsession with social media status, or just the desperate need to fit in with whatever the dominant culture dictates.
Exactly.
So Joshua is standing before this massive crowd, and he has just laid out their entire psychological rap sheet. He tells them they have to actively throw away the Euphrates generational trauma, the Egyptian survival mechanisms, and the Amorite desire for cultural status.
And, the crowd reacts exactly how you would expect a massive crowd to react in a highly emotional moment. In verse 16, they shout, "Far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord, we will serve the Lord." They enthusiastically agree to everything.
But this is where the narrative takes a really strange turn, because Joshua doesn't welcome their enthusiasm at all.
He really doesn't.
He looks at this cheering crowd, ready to sign on the dotted line, and in verse 19 he says, "You are not able to serve the Lord, for he is a holy and jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion."
Yeah.
Why on earth would a leader actively try to talk his followers out of following him? That makes zero sense from a leadership or recruitment perspective.
Well, what's fascinating here is that it makes no sense if you view this as a casual agreement, but Joshua is forcing a massive paradigm shift. An ancient covenant was not like a modern subscription service you could just cancel when you got bored.
Right. Yeah.
It was a binding life or death treaty of exclusive allegiance. And Joshua knows their history of failing at this, so he refuses to let them ride an emotional high into a commitment they haven't actually measured. Spurgeon writes extensively about this dynamic, warning against what he calls the spurious gratitude of humanity.
Spurious gratitude. What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, Spurgeon argues that human beings have a tendency to produce a sudden flash of immense gratitude when they receive a favor or experience a miracle.
Okay.
But because it isn't rooted in a deep foundational change of character, that gratitude expires the absolute moment the novelty wears off or the moment they face a new hardship. The gratitude is spurious. It's fake. It is like a child who cries with joy over a new toy on Tuesday and completely discards it by Thursday.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Joshua knows the crowd's yes is just spurious gratitude driven by the emotion of the assembly.
We see this all the time today in modern psychological or theological terms. We might call what the crowd is offering cheap grace.
Yes.
But in the context of this deep dive, how does the source material actually define the difference between that easy commitment and, actual cost?
Cheap grace is basically the desire for the benefits of a promise without bearing any of the sacrifices required to maintain it. It is making a verbal commitment without calculating the actual cost. And we have a stark contrast to this in our New Testament source material from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27.
Right, the story of Judas Iscariot.
Exactly.
Judas betrays Jesus for 30 pieces of silver.
Correct. Judas makes a fair-weather commitment, abandons it when it is no longer advantageous, and basically sells his allegiance. But when the reality of the crucifixion sets in, Judas feels remorse.
He tries to return the money.
Yeah, he tries to undo the betrayal by simply throwing the 30 pieces of silver back into the temple as if paying a fine can just reset the relationship. But the chief priests refuse to put the money into the treasury because, as they say, it is the price of blood.
Wow.
The concept of atonement, which historically means to make amends or provide covering for a wrong, it cannot be bought with casual apologies or return silver. True commitment and the true restoration of a broken vow requires a profound cost.
So you just cannot buy your way out of a broken covenant.
No.
And that perfectly mirrors what Joshua is doing at Shechem. He is stripping away the illusion that they can just say sorry and throw some silver in a box later. He's completely removing their psychological safety nets and forcing them into a corner where they must make a definitive, absolute choice. He tells them in verse 15, "Choose this day whom you will serve."
The ultimatum is totally necessary because Joshua understands the specific temptation they are facing. You have to remember, the Israelites were not trying to become atheists.
Right.
They weren't trying to completely reject their history. They were attempting something called syncretism.
How does syncretism work in this specific context?
Syncretism is the blending of different beliefs and practices. The Israelites had seen massive historical events like the parting of the Red Sea, the provision in the wilderness, so they didn't want to abandon Jehovah.
They knew the power was real.
Exactly. But they also lived surrounded by Amorite culture, which worshipped gods like Baal Peor, who was associated with agricultural fertility and local prosperity. The Israelites basically wanted to worship Jehovah for national protection, while also keeping Baal on the side just to ensure their crops would grow.
Oh, I see. So they were hedging their bets.
Precisely. As Spurgeon's commentary points out, the people wanted to keep their sins and their God too. Idolatry in this text is rarely depicted as some...
Exactly. If you commit fully to one career path, one relationship, or one set of values, the modern mind just panics and says, but what if I miss out on something better?
We want all the tabs open at all times. But Joshua's demand is that true allegiance is mutually exclusive. You cannot retain the gods of the Amorites and hold the covenant of Shechem. To choose one is to actively discard the other.
That is such a tough question for you, the listener, to confront today. What does throwing away the foreign gods actually look like in a highly connected digital world where every possible option is available to you 24/7?
It's incredibly hard.
It is. What is one specific thing? Maybe it's a constant distraction, a blind ambition, or a toxic relationship that you must actively discard today to truly align with your primary mission. You can't just leave it running in the background. You have to close the tab.
And importantly, it is not enough to just verbally agree to close that tab. The text takes another crucial step regarding human behavior. After Joshua tells them they cannot serve, the people double down again. In verse 21, they insist, "No, but we will serve the Lord." They are super adamant, but Joshua still refuses to just take their word for it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because he knows willpower is a depleting resource. In verse 22, he tells them, "You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen the Lord," and they agree to be witnesses. But why does he need to go beyond their verbal agreement? What's the point of the witness thing?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's because human memory is incredibly fragile, especially in the face of new adversity. If we look at the broader context of the book of Joshua, we see a recurring reliance on physical memorials.
Okay.
In chapter 24, verse 26, after making this covenant, Joshua takes a massive stone and sets it up under an oak tree by the sanctuary. He declares that this stone will be a witness against them, metaphorically stating that the stone has heard all the words that were spoken. Okay, but why a rock, though? I mean, they had scribes. Why not just write a decree? Have everyone sign it and put it in an archive somewhere? Why haul a massive boulder under a tree?
Because a document in an archive doesn't interrupt your daily life.
Rah.
A massive stone in the center of your community
Oh,
does.
that's good.
Right. And this echoes an earlier event in our source material from Joshua chapter 4. When the Israelites miraculously crossed the Jordan River into the new land, the waters were held back. But they weren't allowed to just walk away from the dry riverbed and celebrate.
Right, they had a task to do.
Exactly. They were commanded to send 12 men back into the middle of the river, pick up 12 heavy stones from where the priests stood, carry them to their new camp at Gilgal, and stack them up as a memorial.
There has to be a specific psychological reason for making them do grueling manual labor right after a major life event. There is, and the text states it explicitly in Joshua chapter 4. It says these stones are to serve as a sign, so that, in the future, when their children ask, what do these stones mean, the parents would have a tangible physical prompt to recount the history.
Wow.
The commentaries really emphasize that human memory fails when fear enters the picture. The moment you face a new giant or a new famine, the fear overwrites your historical gratitude. You just forget the miracle of yesterday because of the crisis of today. So the physical witness stone acts as an undeniable interruption to that psychological drift.
It is quite literally a deliberate tripwire for your memory. They had to haul rocks so they would trip over them in the future and be forced to remember.
Exactly.
So for you listening, how do you hold yourself accountable to your deepest convictions when the initial motivation inevitably fades? If you were to set up a stone of witness in your life to mark a major decision, what would it actually look like?
That's the real challenge.
Is it a daily habit that you refuse to break? Is it a trusted community that you have given explicit permission to call you out when you start sliding back toward your coping mechanisms? Or is it a set of hard, non-negotiable boundaries you place around your time? You have to build something physical or structural in your life that interrupts your routine and forces you to remember what you promised.
Because without that structure, the natural human default is to drift. You will drift back to the Euphrates, or you will drift back to Egypt. The stone under the oak at Shechem wasn't merely a monument to a good day. It was a firm boundary line against future compromise.
Let's summarize the framework we've extracted from this historical text. To make a true, absolute decision in your life, you have to follow a very specific progression. First, you have to identify the baggage holding you back, your generational habits, your survival instincts born from trauma, and the cultural pressures to assimilate. Second, you have to move past cheap grace. You have to calculate the heavy, actual cost of commitment, understanding that spur-of-the-moment gratitude will not sustain you. Third, you must overcome modern decision paralysis by closing the extra options and rejecting the urge to blend your loyalties.
Yes.
And finally, you must build tangible witness stones in your life to hold yourself accountable when your willpower eventually runs out.
It is a deeply demanding psychological framework for living a life of conviction. But, as we examine the very end of this historical account, the text leaves us with a pretty chilling, unresolved reality.
Oh.
Yeah, our sources note in Joshua chapter 24, verse 31, that Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived him. As long as the generation who had personally witnessed the events and physically placed the stones was alive, the commitment held.
Okay, but
But it begs a vital question for anyone building their own systems of accountability. What happens to those physical witness stones when the generation that placed them is gone? Can a memorial stone, whether it's a daily habit, a family tradition, or a deeply held ritual, eventually become just another empty idol if the original burning conviction behind it is lost? If you forget the reason you placed the stone, you are really just bowing to a rock.